Hello guys, my name is Sylvia and today my topic of the presentation is what are the characteristics and effects of foreign banks development on Chinese business. And I'm going to introduce you the outline of my presentation. First part is the introduction, then the background, and for the body parts I have divided into 4 parts. The first is main ways to develop and characteristics in China, and the second one is characteristics and advantages of foreign banks. And the third one is the development opportunity brought to Chinese commercial banks. The last one is the impacts brought which the foreign banks brought to Chinese commercial banks. And the last one is conclusion and discussion. I'm going to introduce the research. Along with the entry of foreign banks in China, the Chinese business is affected remarkably. And foreign banks have a small market share, but they have a great potential for development. So they boost the Chinese banking industry and management system. And also they improve the construction of Chinese financial system. From the Mr. Berger's research in 2010, he found that the evidence in China that the diversification really does significant effect on bank performance. And also the purpose of the paper is observing and analyzing the business and institutional development prospects of foreign banks in China by reviewing the development of history and characteristics of foreign banks in China. Next, I'm going to introduce you the background of the research. From the Hassan and Wachtel and Mr. Zhou's research in 2009, they found the political and economic system has changed dramatically in past 20 years. And the change of institution also has boosted the development of Chinese finance. After the implementation of reform and opening up, China's national economy has developed rapidly. The number of multinational companies has entered the Chinese market with foreign capital increasingly, and it causes more and more foreign banks to come into China. And in Hassan and Shi's developed research in 2014, they found that the foreign banks used a unit entry model in China, and at least foreign strategic investors has improved the Chinese management model actively, then accordingly boost the bank performance. And in 2001, China began to carry out the comprehensive foreign exchange business and approved foreign banks in the 4 coastal cities of Shenzhen, Shanghai, Tianjin, and Dalian to start RMB business. And at the end of 2006, the state relaxed the regional restriction and object restrictions on RMB business of foreign banks. And at the end of 2015, the Chinese government fulfilled the promise, that is, the foreign banks in China has become an indispensable part of China's banking industry after 9 years of comprehensive opening up. Next, I'm going to introduce the main way to develop and characteristics in China. This section mainly illustrates the rapid expansion of foreign banks in recent 5 years and the primary characteristics to enter the Chinese market. China's financial market has been fully open to foreign banks since China joined the WTO 5 years ago. Therefore, although the proportion of assets of foreign banks has not significantly changed, its rapid development has brought an enormous impact on China's banking industry and left a deep impression on domestic customers. And there are two main ways for foreign banks to enter the Chinese market. The first one is the establishment of institutions, and the second one is the cooperations with banks in the mainland. From the research of Mr. Park in 2019, he found that 90 of the foreign banks, they have the direct establishment of branches in the mainland, and 30% of them has participated in mainland joint stock commercial banks. However, in the Tao's research in 2014, he found that none of them participate in Chinese four major state-owned commercial banks. This indicates that due to the large scale of four state-owned commercial banks, it is difficult to control them. Therefore, from the Miss Ling's research in 2011, she found that only few big international banks are interested in participating because the four state-owned commercial banks is very difficult to control. So only these big international banks can participate in the four banks. Next is the second part of the body part, which is the characteristics and advantages of foreign banks. The first one is locking the high-end customer market and develop personal finance products actively. From Mr. Shen's research in 2018, he found that the foreign banks only have fewer branches in China, because uh, they want to strive the more market profits. So they want to few customers to provide the most benefits for them. And in terms of the personal business, from the Mr. Berg research in 2010, he stated that the foreign banks provide the one-to-one service, which mainly develop unique financial plans and provides diversified financial products. For example, in Standard Chartered Bank, they provide the priority financial management service for the customer. And in terms of the enterprise business, from the Mr. Mao's research in 2016, he found that the rich international business and experience and developed products and service of the foreign banks. They provide risk solutions in terms of the transactions, and they mainly to reduce the losses of the Chinese. They helps to reduce the losses of Chinese commercial banks. And the second one is maintain a high level of profit growth in the traditional profit model. From Ms. Meng's research in 2018, she indicates that loan op, uh, she indicates that long operating history and rich international experience of foreign banks have made the development of intermediate business very mature. And also, Mr. Huang, in 2011, he discovered that a variety of intermediate businesses with rich levels and strong innovation, such as the guarantee trading and financing and financial derivatives trading. And at the same time, its mixed operation mechanism brings its non-interest income, such as invest income, transaction income, and asset management income. And this intermediary business can account for up to 40% of its total income. However, from Mr. Allen's research in 2010, he found that most of Chinese commercial banks only take the intermediate business to carry the business of absorbing deposits, which only account for less than 10% of the total revenue. Therefore, as a result, the foreign banks are able to rely on the developed intermediary business to obtain a share of profits. Next, the foreign banks adopt a modern corporate governance structure. From Dr. Xu's research in 2011, he believed that each foreign bank has a management mode of current standard company, which is professional and completely market oriented. and it helps getting rid of the disadvantage of most domestic commercial banks, and the allocation of resources is very reasonable and efficient. And from Mr. Bai's research in 2018, he found that with the advanced technology and professional interdisciplinary talents, they can establish mature and complete and systematic research assessment, which risk control mechanism and internal control mechanism and information management system for the healthy operation for the company, so as to prevent the credit risk and market risk. Next part uh, the development opportunities brought to Chinese commercial banks. First of all, from Ms. Xie's research in 2013, with the entry of the foreign banks, the Chinese commercial banks began to deepen the reform of the modern enterprise system. Dr. Dong in 2017, he mentioned that after the foreign banks entering the Chinese market, many domestic commercial banks started to learn advanced management mode, and they began to focus the bank's management structure innovation and transforming into the modern joint stock banks. And Mr. Lois in 2014, he also finds some specific measures, which is the streamlining the cumbersome institutions in banks and establish a sound mechanism of checks and balances and internal supervision and improving the capital adequacy ratio of banks and also improving the equality of assets. The next point is from the Mr. Zhang's point in 2015, which is the entry of foreign banks makes Chinese banks begin to pay attention to the service and product innovation consciousness. From Stijin's research in 2014, he finds that the strong sense of service and a current market positioning and marketing strategies. And from Mr. Zhou's research in 2016, he found that in order to improve the competitiveness and also to take the customer resources, the Chinese commercial banks learned to subdivide the market. And from Mr. Zhou's research, he found that commercial banks accelerate the pace of product innovation, which is the increased investment in the design of financial products and improve the technology of products, and also to satisfy the needs of the Chinese market. Next point is the entry of foreign banks also helps Chinese commercial banks to begin to change the talent training and incentive mechanism. From Dr. Zeng's research in 2011, he found that the foreign banks has a general salary and uncomfortable working environment and other benefits attracts a large number of local excellent financial talents. It the flow of the financial talent market and decreases the core competitiveness of domestic commercial banks. According to Dr. Cao's research in 2009, he found that the importance of high-end talents, which is it also divided in open source and reduced expenditure. The first is open sources. Chinese commercial banks attract high quality talents through the increases. And for the reduced expenditure refers to local banks starting reform the salary distribution and incentive mechanism in an effort to retain its existing professional talents. And next is the provides the professional training for employees and enhance and the matching degree between employee and their positions. According to Mr. Cao's research in 2012, he found that the income will be linked to the individual performance, which is the colleagues' incentives will be more diversified. And the last part is the impacts of foreign banks brought to Chinese commercial banks. The first one is from the Mr. Zeng's research in 2011, which is the foreign banks impact the traditional business of Chinese commercial banks. From Watchtail's research in 2009, he found that following adjustment of easing of policies, foreign banks occupies more and more market shares. And next one is from Mr. Hassan's research, also in 2009. He found that the foreign banks developed early, so rich experience and comprehensive service chain impacts the Chinese commercial banks, and the foreign banks also bring strong products innovation capability to impact to the Chinese commercial bank. Next is the impact of the management mechanism and technical level. From Dr. Chen's research in 2009, he found that the foreign banks have the modern management company's advanced management mode. However, the Chinese commercial banks have influenced by the national policy and management system. From Cao's the research in 2010, he found that the technology is critical, which is restricts the development of modern commercial business. And the Berger in 2010 found that foreign banks fell quicker than Chinese commercial banks in technical level. And from the jail in 2012, he found that Chinese business lost the most high-quality customer sources. The last one is the impact to employment of mechanism. Firstly is from the Dr. Lin's research in 2011. He found that high quality talent echelon has always been the key competitiveness of the financial service industry. And the second one is from the Horan's research in 2011. He found that Chinese commercial banks has a huge personnel skills and high operation cost and low comprehensive quality and low personal training investment. And from Mr. Zhang's research in 2015, the performance shares and bonuses and other forms are better than increased salary. Next, I'm going to have a summary of the research. All in all, the entry of foreign banks have influenced Chinese banks significantly. From Mr. Berg research in 2010, with the continuous advancement of the opening process, the foreign banks will affect Chinese banks more and will compete with each other. Therefore, from Mr. Van's research in 2009, if compete with each other, there will be surprise and other loss both in their disadvantaged areas. And also from Hassan's research in 2014, he explained that they should seek operations in competition and achieve win-win results. There are several solutions for Chinese commercial banks. First is the avoid the direct competitions and based on the domestic market. And next one is the explore new communications model with foreign banks and expand the competitive scope. These are the references for my research. It helps a lot in my research paper. There are 15 references linked in my research paper. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thanks for your listening.